The stagecoach wheels screamed against rock as Quentin Lawson watched the vehicle careen off the mountain road and tumble down the embankment like a child's broken toy, dust and debris exploding into the hot August air of 1883. He dug his heels into his horse's flanks and charged toward the wreckage before his mind could catch up with his body, his heart hammering against his ribs as the coach came to rest on its side in a violent crash of splintering wood and screaming horses. Quentin reached the wreckage within seconds, dismounting before his mare had fully stopped. The driver lay motionless 20 feet from the coach, his neck bent at an unnatural angle. The guard was nowhere to be seen, probably thrown clear during the initial tumble. The horses thrashed in their traces, wild-eyed and bleeding, and Quentin worked quickly to free them from the wreckage, his knife flashing as he cut through leather and rope. The animals bolted the moment they were free, disappearing into the sparse woodland that dotted this particular stretch of road between Walla Walla and the smaller settlements to the east. The passenger compartment had caved in on one side, the door hanging from a single hinge. Quentin wrenched it open and peered inside, expecting the worst. What he found instead made him freeze for just a moment, his breath catching in his throat. A woman lay crumpled against the far wall of the coach, her traveling dress torn and dusty, a gash above her left eyebrow bleeding freely down her pale face. But even unconscious, even battered and bruised, she was the most striking woman he had ever seen. Dark hair had come loose from its pins, spilling around her shoulders like black silk. Her features were refined, almost aristocratic, with high cheekbones and full lips that even now, slack with unconsciousness, seemed to promise something extraordinary. He climbed into the tilted coach and checked her pulse, strong and steady. Relief flooded through him as he carefully examined her for broken bones, working with the practiced efficiency of a man who had seen his share of injuries on the trail. Her left arm was badly bruised but not broken. Her ribs seemed intact. The head wound looked worse than it was, he thought, though head injuries were always unpredictable. She needed a doctor, and soon. Quentin gathered her carefully into his arms and maneuvered out of the wrecked coach. She was lighter than he expected, all delicate bones and soft curves. He carried her to a shaded spot beneath a scraggly pine and laid her down gently, then retrieved his canteen and a clean cloth from his saddlebag. He dampened the cloth and cleaned the blood from her face, working with surprising gentleness for hands that were calloused and scarred from years of hard living. Her eyes fluttered open as he worked, and Quentin found himself staring into the most extraordinary green eyes he had ever seen. They were the color of new grass after spring rain, bright and alive, even clouded with pain and confusion. "Easy now," he said softly. "You have been in an accident. The stagecoach went off the road." She stared at him for a long moment, those remarkable eyes searching his face. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse but cultured, with a slight accent he could not quite place. "The driver, I am sorry, he did not survive the fall." Her eyes closed briefly, pain flickering across her features that had nothing to do with her physical injuries. Poor Mr. Hutchins. He had a wife in Walla Walla, 3 children. You know him. I have taken this route 3 times now. He always drove, always had a kind word and a story. A tear slipped down her cheek, cutting a clean path through the dust. And the guard, I have not found him yet. He may have been thrown clear. She tried to sit up and gasped, her hand going to her head. Quentin steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. "You need to stay still. You have hit your head pretty hard. I need to find Mr. Pemberton, the guard. He has a daughter who just turned 18. He was bringing her a gift from Portland." Quentin was struck by her concern for others when she herself was injured and in pain. "I will look for him. You stay here and rest." I am coming with you. Madam, you are in no condition to be walking around. Those green eyes fixed on him with surprising steel. Mr. Pemberton may be hurt. He may need immediate help. I have some medical training, and you cannot carry supplies and search and tend to him all at once. I am coming with you. Quentin recognized the futility of arguing with that tone. He had 3 older sisters back in Texas, and he knew when a woman had made up her mind. All right, but lean on me. If you fall and crack your head open again, you will have no one to blame but yourself. She managed a wan smile. I absolve you of all responsibility, Mr. Lawson. Quentin Lawson. Josephine Garrett. My friends call me Josie. He helped her to her feet, and she swayed for a moment before steadying herself with a hand on his arm. They walked slowly along the path the coach had carved in its tumble down the embankment, Quentin supporting most of her weight, though she tried gamely to walk on her own. They found Mr. Pemberton wedged between 2 large rocks about 30 yards from the main wreckage. He was alive but unconscious, his leg bent at a sickening angle below the knee. Josie knelt beside him, her fingers finding his pulse point with practiced ease. His heartbeat is strong. The leg is badly broken. We need to set it and splint it before we move him, or we risk severing an artery. You know how to set a broken bone. I studied medicine for 2 years before my father forbade me to continue. He said it was unladylike. She said this without bitterness, simply stating a fact. I will need straight branches, rope or cloth for binding, and something for padding. Quentin gathered what she needed while she examined the guard more thoroughly. She had torn strips from her already damaged petticoat and was using them to clean the worst of the dirt and blood from the injury when he returned. Together, they set the bone, Pemberton mercifully still unconscious through the worst of it. Josie worked with calm efficiency, and Quentin found himself impressed by her steady hands and clear-headed focus. They splinted the leg and fashioned a rough travois from branches and Quentin's bedroll. Getting Pemberton back up the embankment and secured on the travois took the better part of an hour, and by the time they were done, both Quentin and Josie were covered in dust and sweat. The sun was past its zenith now, the afternoon heat building to its daily crescendo. Walla Walla is about 8 miles east, Quentin said, studying the position of the sun. If we leave now, we can make it before dark. What about Mr. Hutchins? I will come back for him once I have gotten you both to the doctor. It is not right to leave him, but the living have to come first. Josie nodded, understanding the hard practicality of it even if it pained her. Quentin attached the travois to his mare, who nickered nervously but accepted the burden. Josie would have to ride as well, which meant she would be riding with him, pressed close on a horse meant for one. He mounted first, then reached down to pull her up behind him. She settled against his back, her arms coming around his waist to steady herself. Quentin tried to ignore the way his heart jumped at the contact, the way her body fit against his like it had been made to be there. This was not the time for such thoughts. She was injured, vulnerable, and under his protection. He would get her to safety, and that would be the end of it. They traveled slowly, careful not to jostle Pemberton any more than necessary. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Quentin stopped twice to give everyone water from his canteen. Josie never complained, though he could feel the way she trembled against him, her strength fading as the adrenaline wore off and the pain set in. Tell me about yourself, he said, partly to keep her awake and alert, partly because he genuinely wanted to know. What brings an opera singer to this part of the country? She was quiet for so long he thought she might have drifted into unconsciousness, but then she spoke, her voice soft near his ear. How did you know I was an opera singer? Your hands. They are soft, well cared for. Not the hands of a woman who works in a kitchen or on a farm. And the way you speak, The control you have over your voice even when you are hurting. I have heard singers before. There is something about the way you breathe, the way you project your words. Am I wrong? No, you are quite right. I am impressed by your perception, Mr. Lawson. Quentin, please. Quentin. She said his name slowly as if tasting it. I like that. It is a strong name. Solid. He felt his ears go hot and was grateful she could not see his face. You did not answer my question. I am performing at the Occidental Hotel in Walla Walla. A 2-week engagement. I have been touring the Western Territories for the past 6 months, performing wherever there is a stage and an audience willing to listen. That is a hard life for anyone, much less a woman alone. I am not entirely alone. My manager travels with me, though he went ahead to Walla Walla 2 days ago to finalize the arrangements. I should have traveled with him, but I wanted to visit a friend in Portland first. A decision I am now regretting. What made you want to perform out here? Surely New York or San Francisco would offer better opportunities. She was quiet again, and when she spoke, there was something wistful in her voice. I have performed in New York, in Boston, in Philadelphia. I have sung for wealthy patrons in their grand homes and for critics in their grand theaters. And I was good. Very good. But I was never quite good enough to be great, do you understand? I was always the singer they hired when the truly great ones were unavailable. I was adequate. Acceptable. Never exceptional. I find that hard to believe. You have never heard me sing. No, but I know quality when I see it, and you are not an adequate sort of woman. She laughed, a sound that even rough with pain had a musical quality to it. Perhaps you are right. Or perhaps you are merely being kind. Either way, I decided that if I could not be exceptional in New York, I would be exceptional somewhere else. Out here, people have less exposure to great opera. They appreciate what they hear more, I think. They listen with their hearts instead of their heads. And I find I prefer that kind of audience. Have you been doing this long? 2 years now. I performed in Sacramento, in Virginia City, in Denver. Small venues mostly, but good audiences. Enthusiastic. I am building something out here, something that belongs to me. Quentin understood that. He had left his family ranch in Texas 5 years ago, seeking something that belonged to him alone, not defined by his father's name or his older brother's shadow. He had drifted through Colorado and Wyoming before settling in the Walla Walla Valley, working as a ranch hand and occasional scout. It was not a grand life, but it was his. The town came into view as the sun touched the western hills, its buildings golden in the slanting light. Walla Walla was a growing community, founded as a military outpost but now thriving as a center for agriculture and trade. The main street was wide and dusty, lined with businesses that catered to farmers, ranchers, and the occasional traveler passing through on their way to somewhere else. Quentin guided his mare straight to Doc Morrison's house at the edge of town. The doctor was in his yard, tending to his small vegetable garden, and he looked up in alarm as Quentin rode up with his unusual cargo. What happened? Doc Morrison was a lean man in his 50s with sharp eyes and capable hands. Stagecoach accident. The lady has a head injury and the man has a broken leg. The driver did not make it. Doc Morrison sprang into action, calling for his wife to help. Together they got Pemberton inside and onto the examination table in the doctor's office. Josie tried to dismount on her own and would have fallen if Quentin had not caught her. He carried her into the house over her protests and set her down in the doctor's waiting room. "I need to help with Mr. Pemberton," she insisted, trying to stand. Quentin gently but firmly pushed her back into the chair. "You need to let the doctor examine you. I will help with Pemberton. But I know what we did, how we set the leg. The doctor needs to know. And you can tell him all about it after he has made sure you do not have a fractured skull." Stay here. Please. Something in his tone made her relent. She sank back into the chair, her face pale and drawn. Quentin followed the doctor into the examination room, where Mrs. Morrison was already cutting away Pemberton's trouser leg to get a better look at the break. "Tell me what happened," Doc Morrison said as he worked, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Quentin explained the accident, the tumble down the embankment, how he and Josie had set the leg before attempting to move Pemberton. The doctor nodded approvingly as he examined their work. "You did well, set it properly, splinted it correctly, probably saved his leg, maybe his life. Who did the actual setting, Miss Garrett? She said she studied medicine." "She did more than study. This is professional work." He glanced up at Quentin. "She is the one with the head injury?" "Yes." "Cut above the eyebrow, was unconscious when I found her. Came to and has been lucid since, but she has been looking pale and shaky. Bring her in here once we have gotten Mr. Pemberton settled. He is going to need surgery on this leg, but he is stable for now." Quentin returned to the waiting room to find Josie slumped in the chair, her eyes closed. For a moment panic seized him, but then he saw the steady rise and fall of her chest. Just sleeping. He knelt beside her and touched her shoulder gently. "Josie, the doctor is ready to see you now." Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on him with obvious effort. "Is Mr. Pemberton all right? He will be. But you need to let Doc Morrison examine you now." He helped her up and supported her into the examination room. Pemberton had been moved to a bed in the back, and Mrs. Morrison was tending to him there. The doctor directed Josie to sit on the examination table and began his work, checking her pupils, examining the cut on her forehead, asking her questions to assess her mental state. "You have a concussion," he said finally. "Probably a moderate one. You need rest, complete bed rest for at least 3 days. No excitement, no stress, no loud noises. Your brain has been rattled around inside your skull and it needs time to heal." "That is impossible. I have a performance tomorrow night." "Then you will have to cancel it." "Miss Garrett, I am not making a suggestion. If you push yourself too hard too soon after a head injury like this, you risk seizures, permanent damage, even death. You will rest, or I will have the sheriff arrest you for your own good." Josie looked stricken. "But I have a contract. The hotel is expecting me. People have paid for tickets. Then they will get their money back or wait for a later performance. Your health comes first." She closed her eyes, and Quentin saw tears leak from beneath her lashes. "You do not understand. This is the largest venue I have booked. The largest audience. If I fail to perform, word will spread. I will be seen as unreliable. It could ruin my reputation before I have even fully established it. And if you perform and collapse on stage, that will ruin your reputation even faster," the doctor said, not unkindly. "I am sorry, but there is no choice here. You will rest," Quentin spoke up. "Where were you planning to stay? The hotel?" "Yes, I have a room reserved." "A hotel is no place to rest properly. Too much noise, too many people coming and going. You have friends in town." "I know some people, but not well enough to impose like this." Quentin made a decision that surprised himself even as he spoke the words. "You will stay at my place. It is quiet, out of town. My cabin is small but comfortable, and you will have peace and quiet to recover." Both Josie and the doctor looked at him in surprise. Josie shook her head. "I cannot possibly. It would not be proper." "What is not proper is you staying in a noisy hotel when you need quiet to heal. I have a spare room. You will stay there. I will sleep in the barn if it makes you feel better about the propriety of it all. Mr. Lawson, I cannot ask you to give up your home." "You are not asking. I am offering. And it is Quentin, remember," the doctor nodded approvingly. "It is a good solution. The Lawson place is quiet and isolated, perfect for recovery, and Quentin is right that a hotel is no place for you right now." Josie looked between them, clearly torn. "I do not even know you, Mr. Lawson. You have already saved my life today. I cannot impose on you further." "It is not an imposition. I have the space and you need somewhere to heal, unless you have a better option." She did not, and they all knew it. Finally, she nodded. "If you are certain, but only for the 3 days the doctor prescribed. After that, I will find other arrangements. After that, you can do as you please. But for now, you are coming with me." The doctor gave them instructions and a bottle of laudanum in case the pain became too severe. He wanted to see Josie again in 2 days to check on her progress. Quentin helped her back onto his horse, and they rode slowly out of town as the last light faded from the sky. His cabin was about 3 miles south of Walla Walla, tucked into a small valley with a creek running nearby. It was a simple structure, built of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney at one end. But it was solid and weatherproof, and Quentin had made it comfortable in the 2 years he had lived there. He had a main room with a fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 2 bedrooms, though he only used one. The second had become storage for tools and tack. He helped Josie down from the horse and supported her into the cabin, lighting lamps as they entered. The interior was neat if Spartan, furnished with pieces he had built himself or bought cheap from other settlers moving on. It was a bachelor's dwelling, functional and plain, and he suddenly felt self-conscious about bringing her here. But Josie looked around with what seemed like genuine appreciation. "It is lovely, quiet, peaceful. It is just a cabin. It is a home. There is a difference." He showed her to the spare room, which he had hurriedly cleared of his stored items while she waited in the main room. There was a bed with a good mattress, a small table, and a chair. Not much, but clean and comfortable. He had put fresh linens on the bed, sheets that smelled of sun and wind from drying on the line. "Will this do?" "It is perfect. Thank you, Quentin, truly. I do not know what I would have done without your help today. You would have figured something out. You are resourceful." She smiled, and even exhausted and hurting, it transformed her face. "Still, I am grateful." He left her to rest and went to tend to his horse and the other evening chores. By the time he came back inside, full dark had fallen and the cabin was quiet. He checked on Josie and found her asleep, still fully clothed on top of the covers. He carefully removed her boots and drew a blanket over her, then retreated to his own room. Sleep was a long time coming. He kept seeing the stagecoach tumbling down the embankment, kept feeling the weight of Josie in his arms as he carried her from the wreckage. He had lived in the territories long enough to know how quickly life could change, how thin the line was between breathing and not breathing. Today he had pulled someone back from that line, and it had shaken something loose inside him. Or maybe it was not the rescue at all. Maybe it was the woman herself, with her green eyes and her determination, and her talk of singing for people who listened with their hearts. He barely knew her, would probably never see her again after she recovered and moved on to her next performance. But something about Josephine Garrett had gotten under his skin, and he suspected it was going to be difficult to forget her. He finally drifted off near dawn, only to wake a few hours later to the sound of someone moving around in the cabin. He dressed quickly and emerged to find Josie in the kitchen area, attempting to make coffee. "What are you doing out of bed?" He tried to sound stern, but probably just sounded worried. She turned to face him, and he saw that while she still looked pale and drawn, she was clean. She had washed her face and hands, and somehow had managed to do something with her hair, pinning it up in a simple but elegant style. She wore the same dress from yesterday, torn and stained though it was, and still managed to look beautiful. "I needed to move around a little. I have been lying still all night. You are supposed to be resting." "I will rest, but first I wanted to make myself useful. As a thank you for your hospitality." "You do not need to thank me, And you certainly do not need to make breakfast. You are injured. I have a concussion, not a broken leg. I can still make coffee." She paused, looking at the pot with some confusion. "Or I could if I knew where you kept things." Despite himself, Quentin felt a smile tug at his lips. "Here, let me help." They made breakfast together, Quentin doing most of the actual work while Josie sat at the table and directed him. It was oddly domestic, comfortable in a way that surprised him. She told him stories about her travels, about the strange characters she had met in various Western towns, about the challenges of being a woman traveling alone in rough country. "Why do you do it?" he asked, flipping flapjacks on the griddle. "If it is so difficult, so dangerous." "You could perform in safer places. Because it matters. Not to everyone, perhaps, but to some people what I do matters. I performed in a mining town in Colorado last year, a rough place full of rough men, and after the performance a man came up to me. Huge fellow, hands like hams, face scarred from a mining accident. He had tears in his eyes. He told me I sounded like his mother, who used to sing to him when he was a boy in Wales. He said he had not thought about her in 20 years, but my singing brought her back to him so clear he could almost see her face. That is why I do it, for moments like that." Quentin served the flapjacks and sat down across from her. "That is a good reason. What about you? What brought you to Walla Walla?" "Work, mostly. I was raised on a ranch in Texas, but it was my father's ranch, then my brother's after him. I wanted to make my own way, not live in someone else's shadow." "Did you find what you were looking for?" He thought about that. "I found a different life, anyway, not sure yet if it is the right one." "What does the right life look like to you?" It was a harder question than it sounded. Quentin cut his flapjack into precise pieces while he considered. "Something that is mine. Land, maybe. A spread I could work, build up from nothing. A place to put down roots. And someone to share it with." He met her eyes, saw genuine curiosity there, not mockery. "Maybe, someday. I am not much for company most of the time. I find that hard to believe. You have been nothing but kind and helpful since the moment you found me. That is different. That is just doing what is right. Not everyone does what is right, even when they know what it is. You could have ridden past that wreckage yesterday. Many men would have. Or you could have taken me to the doctor and left me there, washed your hands of the whole situation. But you did not. You went above and beyond, and that says something about who you are." Quentin felt uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done the same. No, they would not have. "Trust me. I have met enough people in my travels to know that kindness is rarer than it should be." She paused, then added softly, "Thank you, Quentin, for everything." After breakfast, he insisted she go back to bed and rest. She went with only token protest, and he heard her moving around in the spare room for a few minutes before things went quiet. He busied himself with chores, cleaning the kitchen, mending some tack that needed attention, anything to keep his hands and mind occupied. Around midday, he heard a horse approaching and went out to find Doc Morrison riding up to the cabin. "Thought I would check on my patient," the doctor said, dismounting. "Saved you a trip into town. How is she doing?" "She seems all right. Made breakfast this morning, which I told her she should not have done." Doc Morrison chuckled. "Sounds about right. The good ones are always the worst patients. Let me take a look at her." They went inside, and the doctor examined Josie thoroughly, asking her questions about her symptoms, checking her pupils and reflexes. Finally, he nodded, satisfied. "You are doing well, all things considered. Keep resting, keep taking things easy. If you start having severe headaches, vision problems, or nausea, send for me immediately. Otherwise, I will see you in 2 days as planned." After the doctor left, Josie did rest, sleeping away most of the afternoon. Quentin worked outside, repairing a section of fence that had been bothering him for weeks. It felt good to work with his hands, to focus on something simple and straightforward. That evening, he made a simple supper of beans and cornbread. Josie emerged from her room as he was setting the table, looking more rested than she had that morning. "Smells good," she said. "It is nothing fancy." "That is all right. I am not fancy either, despite what my profession might suggest." They ate together as the sun set, painting the sky outside in shades of orange and pink. Josie talked more about her life, about growing up in Boston, about her father who had wanted her to marry well and be a proper society wife. She spoke about her mother who had died when Josie was 16, who had loved music and encouraged her daughter's talent even when her father disapproved. "She would have been proud of what you are doing," Quentin said. "I hope so. Sometimes I wonder if I am just running away from what I am supposed to be, rather than running toward what I want to be. Does it matter? Either way, you are moving. That is more than most people can say." She smiled at that. "You are wise for a cowboy." "I am not a cowboy. I am a ranch hand." "There is a difference." "What is the difference?" "Cowboys are romantic figures in dime novels. Ranch hands are men with sore backs and rough hands who smell like horse and hay." "Well, you do smell like horse and hay, but I think you are romantic anyway." He felt his ears go hot again. "You are delirious from the concussion." "Perhaps, or perhaps I just see clearly." The next 2 days fell into an easy rhythm. Quentin worked during the day, maintaining his cabin and the small plot of land he was slowly improving. Josie rested, read from the few books Quentin owned, and slowly regained her strength. They talked during meals, long conversations that ranged from serious to silly, from philosophical to practical. Quentin learned that Josie was 24 years old, that her favorite color was deep blue like the ocean, that she had a scar on her left knee from falling out of a tree when she was 8. She learned that he was 26, that he had left home at 21 after a fight with his father, that he sometimes missed his sisters but did not miss the expectations that came with being part of a well-known ranching family. "You ever think about going back?" she asked on the 3rd evening as they sat on his small porch watching the stars come out. "Sometimes, but I do not think I could be who they want me to be anymore. Too much has changed." "Have you changed, or have you just become more yourself?" It was a good question, one he did not have an answer for. Maybe both. On the 4th day, Doc Morrison came back to check on Josie and pronounced her well enough to move around more, as long as she took things slowly and did not overtax herself. The news should have pleased Quentin, but instead he felt an unexpected pang of something like disappointment. If she was well enough to move around, she would be well enough to leave soon. Back to town, back to her performances, back to her life. "I should go into town tomorrow," Josie said that evening. "Make arrangements with the hotel, see about rescheduling my performances. I have been imposing on your hospitality long enough. It has not been an imposition. Still, you have your life to live and I have mine. I cannot hide out here forever, much as I might like to." "You like it here?" She looked around the cabin, her expression thoughtful. "I do. It is peaceful, uncomplicated. The rest of my life is so much about movement, about always being on to the next town, the next performance." "This has been a gift, Quentin, a chance to just be still for a moment. You can stay longer if you want, until you are fully recovered." "And when will that be? A week, a month? I have commitments, people depending on me. I have already missed performances. I need to get back to work." He knew she was right, but that did not make it easier to accept. "I will take you into town tomorrow then. Help you get settled." That night, Quentin lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what he was feeling. He had known Josephine Garrett for 4 days. 4 days. It was ridiculous to feel this way about someone he barely knew, someone who would be gone in a matter of hours, and yet he could not deny what was happening. He was falling for her, had probably started falling the moment he saw her crumpled in that wrecked stagecoach. He must have finally fallen asleep, because the next thing he knew, morning light was streaming through his window. He dressed and went out to the main room to find Josie already up, her small travel bag packed and sitting by the door. "I hope you do not mind," she said. "I borrowed a needle and thread and mended my dress as best I could. It is still not really presentable, but it will do until I can get back to my room at the hotel and change into something else. You did not have to do that. I wanted to. I wanted to leave your spare room the way I found it, and I could not do that with my things scattered everywhere." They had breakfast together one last time, the meal quieter than usual. There was so much Quentin wanted to say, but the words tangled up in his throat, refusing to come out. How could he tell her he did not want her to go? How could he ask her to stay when he had nothing to offer her, no future beyond his small cabin and his modest dreams? The ride into town felt both too long and too short. Josie sat behind him on his horse like she had that first day, her arms around his waist, her body pressed against his back. But everything felt different now. Heavier. More significant. Walla Walla was busy when they arrived, the main street full of people going about their daily business. Quentin took Josie straight to the Occidental Hotel, a grand building by local standards with a false front and a covered porch. The manager came hurrying out when he saw Josie, his face a mixture of relief and concern. "Miss Garrett, thank God. When we heard about the stagecoach accident, we feared the worst. Are you all right? The doctor sent word that you were injured." "I am fine, Mr. Clemens, just a minor concussion. I am sorry I missed the performances." "That is not important. What matters is that you are safe." He glanced at Quentin with curiosity. "And who is this?" "This is Mr. Quentin Lawson. He saved my life and nursed me back to health. I owe him everything." Mr. Clemens shook Quentin's hand vigorously. "Then the town owes you a debt of gratitude, sir. Miss Garrett is a treasure. We are honored to have her performing here." Quentin felt uncomfortable with the attention. "I just did what anyone would have done." "Nonetheless, you have our thanks. Now, Miss Garrett, let us get you settled in your room. You must be exhausted. And we need to discuss the rescheduled performances." Josie turned to Quentin, and for a moment they just looked at each other. There was so much in her eyes, so much he thought he saw there but could not be sure of. Gratitude, certainly, but something more. Something that matched the feeling growing in his own chest. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything, Quentin. I will not forget what you did for me. I hope you will be happy here. I hope your performances are a great success. Will you come to one of the performances?" The question took him by surprise. "I do not know much about opera." "You do not need to know about it to enjoy it. Please, I would like you to be there." How could he refuse? "All right, I will come." She smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "Tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. I will have a ticket waiting for you at the door." Then Mr. Clemens was ushering her inside, and Quentin was left standing alone in the street, feeling like something important had just slipped through his fingers. He mounted his horse and rode slowly out of town, back toward his cabin that would feel emptier than it ever had before. The next day dragged by in a slow crawl. Quentin tried to work, to keep himself busy, but his mind kept wandering back to Josie. To the way she looked in the morning light, her hair mussed from sleep. To the sound of her laugh when he said something she found amusing. To the weight of her hands on his shoulders when he had helped her onto the horse. He found himself wondering what she was doing. Was she resting, preparing for her performance? Was she thinking about him at all, or had she already moved on, focused on her work and her career? As the sun began to set, Quentin cleaned up and changed into his best clothes. He did not own much that was fancy, but he had a decent shirt and trousers that were relatively new, boots that he had polished until they shone. He felt self-conscious about the whole thing, like a boy going to his first dance. But he had promised Josie he would be there, and he was not a man to break his word. The Occidental Hotel was crowded when he arrived. Word had clearly spread about the rescheduled performance, and it seemed like half the town had turned out. Quentin made his way to the entrance, where a young man was collecting tickets. "My name is Quentin Lawson. Miss Garrett said she would leave a ticket for me." The young man consulted his list and nodded. "Yes, sir. Right this way." To Quentin's surprise, he was led not to a seat in the back but to the front row, right in the center. The best seat in the house. He sat down feeling conspicuous, aware of the curious glances from the people around him. A rough ranch hand in work clothes, no matter how clean, did not really belong in the front row of an opera performance. But when the lights dimmed and Josie stepped out onto the small stage, all of Quentin's self-consciousness melted away. She wore a gown of deep blue that set off her dark hair and pale skin, simple but elegant. Her hair was pinned up in an elaborate style, and she looked every inch the professional performer. But when her eyes found him in the front row, she smiled. And for just a moment it was like they were the only two people in the room. Then she opened her mouth and began to sing, and Quentin forgot how to breathe. He had heard singing before, of course. Songs in saloons, hymns in churches, work songs on the trail. But nothing had prepared him for this. Josie's voice soared and dipped, powerful and delicate by turns, filling the room with something that felt almost tangible. She sang in Italian, words he did not understand, but somehow the meaning came through anyway. Joy and sorrow, love and loss, hope and heartbreak, all woven together in pure sound. She sang for over an hour, moving through different pieces with effortless grace. Sometimes accompanied by a pianist who had come with her from Portland, sometimes a cappella, her voice alone enough. The audience sat in rapt silence, and Quentin understood what Josie had meant about people listening with their hearts. He could feel the emotion rolling off the stage in waves, could see it reflected in the faces around him. But mostly he watched Josie. The way she moved, the way she held herself, the way she poured everything she had into her performance. And he understood, really understood, why she did this. This was not just a job or a career. This was who she was, distilled down to its purest essence. When she sang, she was completely herself, and it was beautiful. The final note hung in the air for a long moment after she finished, and then the room erupted in applause. People stood, shouting and clapping, and Josie smiled and curtsied, her face flushed with pleasure and exertion. But her eyes kept coming back to Quentin, and every time they did, his heart beat a little faster. The crowd began to disperse slowly, people stopping to congratulate Josie, to tell her how moved they were. Quentin hung back, not wanting to intrude, but after a few minutes, Josie extricated herself from her admirers and came over to him. "Well," she asked, and he heard nervousness in her voice. "What did you think?" "I think," he said slowly, searching for the right words, "that you were wrong about New York. You are not adequate or acceptable. You are exceptional. You are extraordinary. I have never heard anything like that in my life." Her face lit up and she laughed, a sound of pure joy. "You really mean that?" "I do not say things I do not mean." "No, you do not. That is one of the things I like about you, Quentin Lawson. You are honest." "I have to ask you something," he said, the words coming out before he could stop them. "Why did you put me in the front row? I am nobody. Just a ranch hand who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "You are not nobody. You are the man who saved my life, the man who took me into his home and cared for me when I was hurt. The man who made me laugh and made me think and made me feel safe." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was soft. "And you are the man I have not been able to stop thinking about since I left your cabin yesterday morning." Quentin's heart was hammering so hard he was sure she must be able to hear it. Miss Garrett." Mr. Clemens hurried over, his face beaming. "Wonderful performance, simply wonderful. The audience loved you. I have already had 3 requests to extend your engagement. What do you say? Could you stay another week? 2 weeks?" Josie glanced at Quentin, something uncertain in her eyes. "I do not know. I have commitments in other towns." "Surely they can wait. This is your chance to really make a name for yourself in Walla Walla. Please at least think about it." "I will think about it," Josie agreed. "Can I give you my answer tomorrow?" Of course, of course. Take all the time you need. I will leave you to your well-deserved rest." Again, wonderful performance. He hurried off, already talking to someone else about extending the engagement. Josie turned back to Quentin. "Will you walk with me? I need some air." They stepped out into the warm August night, the street quieter now that most people had gone home. They walked in silence for a few minutes, both of them seeming to struggle with what to say. Finally, Quentin spoke. "You should extend your engagement. This is what you wanted, right? A successful run in a bigger venue." "Yes, it is what I wanted." "Then you should do it." "What about you? What about me?" She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Quentin, I am trying very hard to be subtle here, but you are not making it easy. So I am just going to say it plainly. I do not want to leave. Not because of the performance or the venue or my career. Because of you. These past few days, staying at your cabin, talking with you, being with you have been some of the happiest of my life. And I hope that maybe you felt it too." Quentin stared at her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "You want to stay here, in Walla Walla?" "I want to stay near you. Whether that is Walla Walla or somewhere else, I do not care. I know it is fast. I know we barely know each other, but I also know that what I feel for you is real. More real than anything else in my life right now. I do not understand. You could have anyone. You are talented, beautiful, accomplished. I am just a ranch hand with a small cabin and no prospects. You are a good man with a kind heart and honest eyes. You are someone who does the right thing even when it is hard. You are someone who sees me, really sees me, not just the performer or the woman with a pretty voice. You see Josie and you like what you see. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Quentin reached out and took her hand, his rough fingers intertwining with her smooth ones. "I do see you. And what I see is someone extraordinary. But I have to be honest with you, Josie. I do not have much to offer. I work hard, but I am not rich. I am saving to buy my own land someday, but that is years away. And you have this whole career, this whole life. I cannot ask you to give that up for me." "You are not asking. I am offering. And I am not talking about giving up my career. I am talking about building a life that includes both. I can perform in Walla Walla, in the surrounding towns. I can make this area my home base instead of constantly traveling. It would mean smaller audiences, less prestige, but it would also mean stability, roots, things I have not had in a long time. And you would really want that, honestly. I would want it if it meant being with you." Quentin felt like his heart might burst right out of his chest. All his life he had been practical, cautious, slow to act. But standing here in the warm summer night with Josephine Garrett's hand in his, he decided to take a leap. "I am falling in love with you," he said, the words coming out rough but true. "I know it is too fast, too soon. But I cannot help it. From the moment I saw you in that wrecked stagecoach, something in me just knew. And these past few days have only made it stronger. So if you want to stay, if you want to build something here, then I want that too. More than anything." Josie's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I am falling in love with you too. Maybe I already have fallen, and it terrifies me and thrills me all at once." Quentin pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucked under his chin, her body warm and solid against his. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other under the stars. "So what do we do now?" he asked finally. "I extend my engagement at the Occidental. You keep working. We spend time together, get to know each other properly. We take this slow and see where it goes." "That sounds like a good plan." She pulled back enough to look up at him, her green eyes bright in the darkness. "And maybe, if things go well, we talk about what comes next. About building a real future together." "I would like that." Then, because it felt like the most natural thing in the world, he kissed her. It was a soft kiss, gentle and questioning, a kiss that promised more but did not demand. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I should get back to the hotel," Josie said reluctantly. "People will talk if I stay out too late with a mysterious cowboy. I am not a cowboy. You will always be a cowboy to me, my cowboy, the one who saved me." They walked back to the hotel hand in hand, making plans to see each other the next day. Quentin would come into town after his morning chores and they would have lunched together. It was a small thing, a simple thing, but it felt momentous. It felt like the beginning of something important. Over the next few weeks, Quentin and Josie fell into a routine. She performed 3 nights a week at the Occidental. Her engagement extended and then extended again as word of her talent spread through the valley. On her off days, she would come out to Quentin's cabin, and they would spend hours talking, working together, just being near each other. Josie learned to cook over a wood stove, burning her first 3 attempts at biscuits before finally getting them right. Quentin learned to appreciate opera, attending every one of her performances and slowly beginning to understand the stories the songs told. They learned each other's habits, quirks, moods. The way Josie hummed while she worked. The way Quentin's left eyebrow would twitch when he was annoyed but trying not to show it. They talked about their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Josie told him about the pressure she had felt growing up, the expectations of her father and society, the way she had always felt like she was disappointing someone no matter what she did. Quentin told her about leaving Texas, about the guilt he sometimes felt for walking away from his family, about his fear that he would never amount to anything on his own. "You amount to something to me," Josie said when he confessed this. "You amount to everything." As autumn began to paint the valley in shades of gold and red, Quentin made a decision. He went into town one morning and spoke with the land agent, inquiring about available property. There was a parcel about 5 miles from Walla Walla, 80 acres with good water and decent grazing. It was more than he could afford on his own, but the agent was willing to work out a payment plan. Quentin signed the papers with a hand that only shook a little. It was the biggest risk he had ever taken, tying himself to this place, to this future. But it felt right. For the first time since leaving Texas, he was not just drifting. He was building something. He told Josie that evening after her performance. They were sitting on the hotel porch, watching the stars come out, and he tried to sound casual about it. "So I bought some land today." She turned to him, eyes wide. "You what, bought land?" 80 acres, good water. Thought I might try my hand at ranching. Small operation, just me to start. But it is mine." "Quentin, that is wonderful. Why did you not tell me you were thinking about this?" "Did not want to jinx it. And I wanted to be sure I could actually do it before I said anything." She was quiet for a moment and he felt a flutter of nerves. Had he moved too fast? Should he have discussed it with her first? But then she said, "Where is this land? Can I see it?" "Of course. I will take you out there tomorrow if you want." They rode out the next morning on Quentin's horse, taking their time, enjoying the cool autumn air and the brilliant colors of the changing leaves. The property was beautiful in a raw, unspoiled way, with rolling hills and a small creek running through one corner. There was no house, no barn, nothing but open land waiting to be shaped. Josie dismounted and walked around, taking it all in. Quentin watched her, trying to gauge her reaction, hoping she could see what he saw. Not just land, but potential, a future. "It is perfect," she said finally, turning back to him with a smile. "I can see it. A house there on that rise, a barn closer to the creek, pastures for horses and cattle. Gardens, maybe some fruit trees. You can see all that. I can see it because I want it. With you." Quentin felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he had been carrying without realizing it. "I was hoping you would say that, because I bought this land for us, Josie. I know we have not talked about marriage or anything formal, but I want you to know that this is me saying I am in this for the long term. I am building a future and I want you in it." Josie crossed the space between them and took his hands. "Then let us make it official. Ask me, Quentin." His heart was pounding, but he knew what he wanted. He had known for weeks now, maybe even longer. "Josephine Garrett, will you marry me? I do not have a ring. I do not have much of anything yet but a plot of land and a lot of plans. But I have love, more love than I knew I was capable of. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that." "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I will marry you. And you are wrong about not having much. You have everything that matters." They held each other there on the empty land that would become their home, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, Josie looked up at Quentin with shining eyes. "I want to tell you something," she said. "Something I realized during my performance last night." "What is that?" "I have been searching my whole life for the perfect song, the perfect piece that would define me as an artist. I thought it would be an area, something famous and challenging. But I realized last night when I looked out and saw you in the audience like you always are, that I have already found my perfect song. It is you, Quentin. You are my most beautiful song." Quentin felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I am not musical. I cannot carry a tune to save my life." "That does not matter. Music is not just about sound. It is about harmony, about different elements coming together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. That is what we are. That is what we have together. You are my most beautiful song, and I want to sing it for the rest of my life." He kissed her then, pouring everything he felt into it. Love and hope and promise and commitment. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. "We should get back," Josie said reluctantly. "I have a performance tonight. Let us stop in town first. I want to buy you a ring." They rode back to Walla Walla and went straight to the general store, which carried a small selection of jewelry. The rings were simple, nothing fancy, but Quentin found one that fit Josie perfectly. A slim gold band with a small garnet set in it. Not a diamond, but Josie declared it more beautiful than any diamond could be. News of their engagement spread quickly through the town. People who had come to know Josie through her performances, and Quentin through his quiet, steady presence, were delighted. The hotel manager insisted on hosting the wedding reception. Doc Morrison and his wife offered to help with planning. Even the local minister, a practical man named Reverend Hayes, seemed pleased to be officiating. They were married 6 weeks later, on a crisp November morning in the small church at the edge of town. Josie wore a simple white dress she had made herself, with help from Mrs. Morrison. Quentin wore a new suit, the first he had ever owned. The church was packed with people, friends they had made in their short time together in Walla Walla. As Quentin stood at the altar and watched Josie walk down the aisle toward him, he felt a sense of rightness so profound, it almost brought him to his knees. This woman, this extraordinary woman, had chosen him, had seen something in him worth staying for, worth building a life with. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They spoke their vows in clear, steady voices, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When Reverend Hayes pronounced them husband and wife, Quentin kissed Josie with all the love in his heart, and the congregation burst into applause. The reception at the Occidental Hotel was lively and joyful. There was music and dancing, food and drink, toasts and laughter. At one point, someone called for Josie to sing, and after some coaxing, she agreed. She stood in the center of the room, no stage or accompaniment, and sang a simple folk song about love and home. Her voice filled the space with warmth and light, and when she finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. "That is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard," Quentin told her later, as they danced slowly to music provided by a local fiddle player. "Wait until you hear me singing lullabies to our children," she said with a smile. "That will be even more beautiful. You want children. I want everything with you. Children, a home, a life, all of it." They spent their wedding night at the cabin, which felt different now that Josie was truly his wife. She had moved her things in over the past weeks, her presence gradually transforming the bachelor dwelling into a real home. Her books on the shelves, her dresses hanging next to his work shirts, her hairbrush on the dresser. All the small signs that this was now their place, not just his. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies the way they had learned each other's hearts. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, talking quietly about their plans for the future. "We will need a bigger bed," Josie said. "This one is too small for both of us. I will build one. A big one, big enough for us and all our future children who will inevitably end up sleeping with us." She laughed. "You have thought about this. I think about everything now in terms of us, what we will need, what we will want. It is a strange feeling, but a good one. I know what you mean. I used to plan everything around my performances, my career. Now I plan around us, around the life we are building together." They drifted off to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, content and happy in a way neither of them had ever been before. The winter was mild that year, and they used the time to make plans for their land. Quentin drew sketches of the house he wanted to build, incorporating suggestions from Josie. It would be a simple ranch house, wood frame with a wide porch, but comfortable and well built. 2 bedrooms to start, with the option to add more later. A kitchen big enough for Josie to work in comfortably. A front room where they could sit together in the evenings. Josie continued to perform at the Occidental through the winter, though less frequently than before. She was building a reputation in the area, and people would travel from surrounding towns to hear her sing. But she was also helping Quentin prepare for the move to their land, and that took time and energy. In early spring, they broke ground on the house. Quentin did most of the work himself, with help from some of the local men who had come to respect him. It was hard, back-breaking labor, but he loved every minute of it. This was his land, his house, his future taking shape under his hands. Josie was there every day, helping where she could, bringing lunch, offering encouragement. She was fascinated by the process of building, asking endless questions about why things were done certain ways. Quentin found he enjoyed explaining it to her, enjoyed the way she listened with genuine interest. "You should have been an engineer," she told him one afternoon as they sat in the shade, taking a break from the heat. "Why do you say that?" "Because you understand how things fit together. How to make something strong and lasting. That is a rare skill. It is just practical knowledge. Anyone can learn it. Maybe, but not everyone would put the care into it that you do. You are not just building a house. You are building a home. There is a difference." The house was finished by midsummer, a beautiful structure that looked like it belonged on the land, like it had always been there. They moved in immediately, bringing their few possessions from the cabin. That first night in their new home, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set over their land, their future stretching out before them. "It is perfect," Josie said, leaning against Quentin's shoulder. "Everything I dreamed of and more. It is just the beginning. We still need to build the barn, get some stock, plant gardens. I know, but this is the foundation. This is what everything else will be built on, and it is solid, strong like us." Quentin wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close. "Like us," he agreed. Over the next few months, they continued to build their ranch. Quentin constructed a barn and bought a few head of cattle, the start of what he hoped would eventually become a thriving herd. Josie planted gardens, vegetables and flowers both, bringing color and life to the area around the house. They acquired chickens for eggs, a milk cow, a couple of horses. It was hard work, the kind that left them exhausted and sore at the end of each day. But it was also satisfying in a way nothing else had ever been. They were creating something together, building a life from the ground up. Josie still performed, but less frequently now. Once or twice a month she would go into town and sing at the Occidental or at local events. People still loved her performances, still came from miles around to hear her, but she was no longer defined solely by her singing. She was a rancher's wife, a partner in building something lasting. "You ever miss it?" Quentin asked her one evening as they sat on their porch, watching their small herd graze in the distance. The traveling, the performing, the excitement of it all. Josie considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the adrenaline of performing in new places for new audiences. But I do not miss the loneliness of it. I do not miss the constant uncertainty, never knowing where I would be from one month to the next. This life we are building, it is different, better, more real. You can always go back to it if you want, if you ever feel like this is not enough." She turned to look at him, her green eyes serious. "Quentin Lawson, you listen to me. This life, this ranch, you are more than enough. You are everything. I chose this. I chose you. And I have never regretted it for a single moment." He believed her. He could see the truth of it in her eyes, in the way she had thrown herself into building this life with him. As autumn came around again, a year after they had met, Josie discovered she was pregnant. She told Quentin one evening after supper, her eyes bright with excitement and nerves, "I am with child. The baby should come in early spring." Quentin felt his world shift, realigning around this new reality. A baby. They were going to have a baby. He was going to be a father. "Are you all right?" Josie asked, looking worried at his silence. "I know we have not talked much about children. If this is too soon, if you are not ready," he cut her off with a kiss, pouring all his joy and love into it. When he pulled back, he was grinning like a fool. "I am ready. I am more than ready. We are going to have a baby." She laughed, relief evident on her face. "Yes, we are. Are you scared? Terrified, but in a good way, in the best way." They prepared for the baby through the winter months. Quentin built a cradle from oak, sanding it until it was smooth as silk. Josie sewed tiny clothes, her needlework careful and precise. They talked endlessly about names, about what kind of parents they wanted to be, about the future they were creating for this child who did not even exist yet. "I want them to be free," Josie said one night as they lay in bed, her hand resting on her growing belly. "Free to choose their own path, their own dreams. I do not want them to feel trapped by expectations the way I did." "They will be free," Quentin promised. "We will make sure of it." Their son was born on a warm day in April, a healthy baby with a strong set of lungs and his mother's green eyes. They named him William, after Josie's father, a gesture of reconciliation even though her father had never replied to the letters she had sent about her marriage and her new life. Holding his son for the first time, Quentin felt a surge of love so powerful it almost frightened him. This tiny person, so helpless and dependent, was his responsibility, his and Josie's. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. Josie was a natural mother, patient and loving even when exhausted from sleepless nights. She would sing to William constantly, lullabies and folk songs, and sometimes even opera, her beautiful voice the soundtrack of his early days. "You were right," Quentin told her one evening as they watched William sleep in his cradle. "This is even more beautiful than hearing you sing at your performances. This is the most beautiful song of all." The years passed quickly after that, filled with the busy chaos of raising a child and building a ranch. William grew into a lively, curious boy who loved following his father around the property, mimicking his work. Josie continued to perform occasionally, though now she often brought William with her, and the sight of the elegant opera singer with a toddler on her hip became a familiar one in Walla Walla. When William was 3, their daughter was born. They named her Sarah, and she had her father's dark hair and serious demeanor. Where William was all energy and motion, Sarah was contemplative and calm, content to sit and watch the world around her. "She is like you," Josie told Quentin. "Thoughtful, observant, she sees things." The ranch prospered as the children grew. Quentin's small herd expanded, his reputation for quality cattle spreading through the region. They hired hands during busy seasons, young men who appreciated Quentin's fair treatment and Josie's excellent cooking. The house expanded too, with the addition of more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Life was not always easy. There were lean years when the weather was bad and money was tight. There were illnesses and injuries, the usual trials of life on the frontier. But through it all, Quentin and Josie faced everything together, their love deepening with each challenge they overcame. When William was 8 and Sarah was 5, Josie's father came to visit. He arrived unannounced one autumn afternoon, a distinguished older gentleman who looked uncomfortable in his expensive Eastern clothes. "Father," Josie said, her voice carefully neutral as she stood on the porch, "this is unexpected. I know. I apologize for not writing ahead. May I come in?" Quentin watched carefully as Josie's father entered their home, taking in the modest but comfortable furnishings, the toys scattered on the floor, the general organized chaos of a family home. William and Sarah peeked around the corner, curious about this stranger. They sat awkwardly in the front room, and for a few minutes no one spoke. Finally, Josie's father cleared his throat. "I came to apologize. When you wrote to me about your marriage, about your new life out here, I was angry, disappointed. I thought you were throwing your life away, wasting your talent, but I was wrong. I can see that now." "What changed your mind?" Josie asked. "I heard you perform in San Francisco about 6 months ago. I was there on business and I saw an advertisement for an opera performance. Your name was mentioned as one of the great voices from the Western Territories, and I was curious. I went, not really expecting much. But Josephine, you were magnificent, truly magnificent. The audience loved you. And afterward, I heard people talking about you, about how you had built a career and a life out here, about how you were raising a family while still pursuing your art. I realized then that you had not thrown your life away. You had built exactly the life you wanted on your own terms." Tears were streaming down Josie's face. "Thank you for saying that. You have no idea how much I needed to hear it. I should have said it years ago. I should have supported you from the beginning. I was a fool, letting pride and stubbornness keep me from my daughter, from my grandchildren." He looked at Quentin. "And I owe you an apology as well, Mr. Lawson. I judged you without knowing you, assumed the worst because you were not the sort of man I would have chosen for my daughter. But I can see now that you are exactly the right man for her. The way she looks at you, the way she speaks of you, the way you have built this life together. I was wrong about you." Quentin nodded, accepting the apology. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot to Josie, which means it matters to me." Mr. Garrett stayed for a week, getting to know his grandchildren, learning about the ranch, slowly building bridges that should never have been burned. By the time he left, there were hugs and promises to write, to visit again. After he was gone, Josie cried in Quentin's arms, tears of relief and joy and release. "I did not realize how much I needed that closure, how much I needed him to see that I made the right choice." "You did make the right choice. I know I am biased, but I truly believe that." She looked up at him, her eyes still wet but smiling. "You are my most beautiful song, Quentin. You always will be. No matter what my father or anyone else thinks, I know I made the right choice. Because I chose you and you chose me, and together we have built something extraordinary." The children grew, as children do. William showed an aptitude for ranching, loving the work and the land the way his father did. Sarah surprised everyone by taking after her mother, with a beautiful singing voice that Josie began to train carefully. They added to the house again, building a music room where Sarah could practice, and Josie could give lessons to local children who showed promise. Josie still performed occasionally, now often with Sarah accompanying her. Mother and daughter singing together became a popular draw, people coming from all over the territory to hear them. But Josie never went back to constant traveling, never sacrificed her family for her career. She had found a balance that worked, a way to be both artist and wife and mother. Quentin watched his family grow with a sense of deep contentment. His ranch was successful, his children were healthy and happy, and his wife still looked at him like he was the most important person in her world. What more could a man ask for? When William was 16, he asked his father about the day he had saved his mother from the Stagecoach wreck. They were mending fence together, a chore that allowed for conversation without requiring constant eye contact. "Mother tells the story sometimes," William said, "about how you pulled her from the wreckage, took care of her, fell in love, but she always makes it sound more romantic than it probably was." Quentin considered that. It was romantic, maybe not in the way stories usually are, but in its own way. "Your mother was the most extraordinary person I had ever met, and I knew it from the first moment I saw her. Broken and bleeding in that wrecked coach, and still the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Not because of how she looked, though she is beautiful, but because of who she is. Her strength, her kindness, her determination, all of that was visible even in that terrible moment. How did you know she would stay, that she would give up her career for you? I did not know, and she did not give it up for me. She transformed it into something that fit the life we wanted to build together. There is a difference. Your mother is not a woman who gives up her dreams for anyone. She is a woman who finds a way to make all her dreams work together. I hope I find someone like that someday. You will. When the time is right, you will find someone who fits, who makes you better, who you want to build a life with. And when you do, hold on tight and do not let go." Sarah was 14 when she announced she wanted to go to San Francisco to study music seriously. It was not unexpected, but it still hit Josie and Quentin hard. "Their baby going off into the world, are you sure?" Josie asked. "It is a big city, very different from here." "I am sure. I love singing, Mother. I love it the way you do, but I want to learn more, do more. I want to see if I can make it in the big cities, not just in small western towns." Quentin saw the conflict on Josie's face. Pride that her daughter had inherited her talent and passion, fear of letting her go, understanding that sometimes love means giving people the freedom to chase their dreams. "Then you should go," Josie said finally. "But you come home whenever you need to. This will always be your home." They sent Sarah to San Francisco with money they had saved, letters of introduction to people Josie had performed with over the years, and all the love and support they could give. She wrote regularly, her letters full of excitement and new experiences. She was thriving, learning, growing into the artist she was meant to be. "She is doing what I did," Josie said one evening as they sat on their porch, reading Sarah's latest letter. "Chasing her dream, building her own path. I am proud of her. And she is doing it with our support, not in spite of it. That is the difference. You made sure she would not have to choose between her family and her art the way you did. We made sure. This is your accomplishment as much as mine." Years passed. William married a local girl named Emma, the daughter of a neighboring rancher, and they built a house on the eastern edge of Quentin and Josie's land. They had 3 children in quick succession, filling the ranch with new life and laughter. William took over more and more of the day-to-day operations, allowing Quentin to slow down a bit as he got older. Sarah returned from San Francisco after 5 years, having built a solid reputation, but deciding she preferred the life she had grown up with. She married a pianist she had met during her studies, and they settled in Walla Walla, where they opened a music school together. Sarah still performed regularly, now with her husband accompanying her, and their concerts were always well attended. Quentin and Josie watched their children build their own lives, their own dreams, with the satisfaction of parents who had done their job well. They had raised good humans who knew how to love, how to work, how to balance ambition with family. They grew old together on the ranch they had built, their hair turning gray, their movements slowing, but their love as strong as ever. Every evening they would sit on their porch and watch the sun set over land they had shaped with their own hands. "You ever regret it?" Quentin asked one evening, decades after they had first met. "Giving up the big stages, the acclaim, all of that?" Josie took his hand, her fingers still fitting perfectly with his despite the years. "I did not give it up. I traded it for something better. I traded temporary glory for lasting love. I traded applause from strangers for the joy of watching our children grow. I traded everything uncertain for everything that matters. No, I do not regret it, not for a single moment. You were always the most beautiful song, Josie. From the first moment to now, the soundtrack of my whole life. And you were my most beautiful song. The one I did not know I was waiting to hear until I heard it. Everything else was just preparation for finding you." They sat together as the stars came out, holding hands and counting blessings. 3 grandchildren through William and Emma, 2 more through Sarah and her husband. A ranch that had grown beyond their early dreams. A community where they were respected and loved. A life full of meaning and purpose and love. Quentin died on a summer morning in his 83rd year, peacefully in his sleep with Josie beside him. He had lived a good life, a full life, surrounded by family and love until the very end. His last words to Josie, whispered the night before, were simple and true. "You were my greatest adventure. I love you." Josie lived another 5 years after that, still strong and vital into her late 80s. She spent her remaining time with her children and grandchildren, teaching them songs, sharing stories of their grandfather, making sure they understood the importance of love and family, and building a life that mattered. She died on a crisp autumn morning, similar to the one where she and Quentin had married so many years before. Her last words were sung, a soft melody that her children and grandchildren recognized as the lullaby she had always sung to them. When the song ended, she smiled, closed her eyes, and slipped away peacefully. They buried her next to Quentin on the ranch they had built together, under the open sky they had loved. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, were carved the words she had spoken so long ago. "You are my most beautiful song." The ranch continued through their children and grandchildren, the land they had claimed and shaped remaining in the family. The house Quentin had built with his own hands still stood, solid and strong, sheltering new generations. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear singing carried on the wind, a beautiful voice lifted in joy, singing the song of a life well lived and a love that transcended everything, even death itself. Their story became a legend in the Walla Walla Valley, the tale of the cowboy who saved the opera singer from the stagecoach wreck and the extraordinary life they built together. Parents told it to their children as an example of true love. Young couples would visit their graves, asking for blessings on their own unions. And always, always, people remembered Josie's words, "You are my most beautiful song," because in the end that was what their life together had been. A beautiful song, carefully composed, lovingly performed, harmonizing two very different melodies into something greater than either could have achieved alone. A song that started with a dramatic rescue on a dusty road and ended with peace and contentment decades later. A song that spoke of love, commitment, partnership, and the extraordinary power of two people who chose each other and never looked back. The legacy of Quentin Lawson and Josephine Garrett lived on not just in their descendants, but in the values they had embodied: hard work, dedication, the courage to chase your dreams while holding tight to what mattered most, the understanding that love was not about grand gestures or perfect moments, but about showing up day after day, year after year, choosing each other over and over again. Their great-grandchildren would visit the old ranch house and hear stories of the stagecoach rescue, of the opera singer who fell in love with the quiet cowboy, of the life they built from nothing but love and determination. And those children would grow up understanding that real love, the kind worth having, was not found in fairy tales or romance novels. It was found in the everyday moments, the shared work, the quiet evenings on the porch, the choice to stay and build rather than run and hide. The world changed around them, as worlds do. The Wild West they had known slowly transformed into something tamer, more civilized. The territories became states. Towns grew into cities. The frontier that had been so raw and dangerous in their youth became settled and safe. But through all those changes, the story of Quentin and Josie remained constant, a reminder that some things, the important things, never really change: love, family, home. These were the constants, the foundations upon which everything else was built. And Quentin and Josie had understood that from the beginning, even when they were just two strangers brought together by chance and circumstance. Some might say it was fate that brought them together that day on the mountain road. Others might call it luck, good or bad depending on your perspective. But Quentin and Josie always believed it was something simpler and more profound. It was possibility. The possibility that existed in every moment, every choice, every chance encounter. The possibility that your whole life could change in an instant if you were brave enough to reach for it. And they had reached for it, both of them. She, by choosing to stay instead of moving on to the next performance, the next town. He, by offering his home, his heart, his future to a woman he barely knew but somehow recognized as essential. They had taken a leap into the unknown together, and they had built something beautiful from that brave choice. In the years after their deaths, the ranch they had built passed through several generations of their family. Each generation added their own touches, made their own improvements, but the core of what Quentin and Josie had created remained. The house still stood, solid and strong. The land still produced. The family still gathered there for holidays and celebrations, keeping the connection to their past alive. And in Walla Walla, in the Occidental Hotel that still stood on Main Street, there was a small plaque commemorating Josephine Garrett, the opera singer who had graced their stage so many years ago. Once a month, Someone from the family would come and perform, keeping Josie's tradition alive. Sometimes it was Sarah's children or grandchildren. Sometimes it was William's descendants who had inherited a bit of their grandmother's musical talent. But whoever performed, they always ended the concert the same way, by telling the story of how their great-grandmother met their great-grandfather, of the stagecoach wreck and the rescue, and the love that bloomed from tragedy. And then they would sing a simple folk song, the one Josie had sung at her wedding reception all those years ago. The song about love and home, about finding where you belong and holding on tight. It was never a fancy performance, never showcased the full range of their abilities. But it did not need to be, because it was not about showing off or impressing anyone. It was about remembering, about honoring, about keeping alive the memory of two people who had loved each other well and built something that lasted. The world continued to turn as it always does. New stories replaced old ones in people's minds. New legends were born. But in the Walla Walla Valley, the story of Quentin and Josie never quite faded away. It persisted, passed down through generations, a tale that spoke to something fundamental in the human heart. The desire to be seen, to be valued, to be loved for who you truly are. The longing to build something that lasts, something that matters. The hope that even in our darkest moments, when the stagecoach has crashed and everything seems lost, someone will come along and pull us from the wreckage, brush us off, and say, "I am here. You are not alone." That was the gift Quentin had given Josie all those years ago, and the gift she had returned to him. The gift of presence, of partnership, of unwavering support and love. And it was a gift that continued to ripple outward through time, touching everyone who heard their story and inspiring them to reach for their own beautiful songs. In the end, that was their true legacy. Not the ranch, though it prospered. Not the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, though they carried on the family name with pride. But the example they had set, the proof they had provided that love, real love, the kind that lasts, was possible. You just had to be brave enough to reach for it when it appeared. Brave enough to hold on through the hard times. Brave enough to build something together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. And somewhere in whatever comes after, Quentin and Josie were together still, walking through fields of wildflowers, sitting on a porch watching the sun set, holding hands the way they always had, still singing their beautiful song, the one they had composed together across decades of shared life. A song that would never end, because true love never really dies. It just transforms, becoming memory and legend and inspiration for all who come after. Their story ended as all stories must. But the love they had shared, the life they had built, the example they had set, these things endured. And that, perhaps, was the most beautiful song of all.